through Valhalla of Nostalgia with the 80s and 90s Uncensored. I am your host, Milo Dennison, and today I'm joined with Christina and Chad from His and Hers Gen X podcast. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hey.
Having us.
All right, so this will be a fun one. First of all, before we get into Mallrats, tell us a little bit about your show.
Well, it's the premise of the show is each of us introduce the other to a movie or TV show or an album or something from 70s, 80s, 90s that the other one never experienced or just hasn't thought about in like decades. So Christina showed me a lot of horror movies that I never saw. I showed her, she never saw any of the Star Wars movies, so I showed her the original trilogy.
Ooh.
And actually, we just watched Chase and Amy about a month ago.
Love it.
Yeah.
So this is a good follow-up to that one.
I feel like we can just work through the Kevin Smith films at this point because we're already there.
I was always a huge, like the 90s Kevin Smith, was a huge fan.
Yeah, I didn't really get into any of his like those kind of weirdy horror, kind of body horror things that he did.
Oh, Tusk.
Tusk is what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
And I think his new stuff is kind of back to form a little bit. Of course, it's just sequels of his old movies, so I guess there you go. But yeah, so let's talk about Mallrats. So it came out in 1995. And
yeah, I actually saw this in the theaters.
Did you?
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if I did too. Like it's around the time I would have been watching Kevin Smith movies in theaters, but I don't remember if I saw it in the theater or on home. Probably VHS or DVD is most likely how I saw this one, though. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, Go ahead.
Okay. Sorry, I don't want to derail your point, but okay. So you remember way back in the early days of the internet with dial-up AOL?
Mm-hmm.
I remember like way back then, like celebrities would do like a Ask Me Anything, like a live chat. Like, and you just assume it was that. Like, it's no video or audio. It's just text, And I'm like, so I remember going on AOL and it was a Q&A with Kevin Smith for like an hour when Mallrats came out. And everybody was like raving about it. And
were they raving about it? Because it was not well received when it first came out.
Well, if you were a hardcore Kevin Smith fan, like you were going to go to the movies and go see it. So yeah, like I have the trivia right here and said it made only like $2 million in the box office, which is like terrible. But
on an $8 million budget.
Yeah, I'm sure about $5 of that came from me.
Nice.
Christina, you saw this before, right?
I didn't see this until I was probably in college, which is when I started seeing more of the Kevin Smith movies, Chasing Amy and this. So I didn't see this in the 90s.
When did you first see it, Milo?
It would have had to been shortly after it came out because I was a Kevin Smith fan right away from Clerks. After that, everything was like gold. And it's funny because this is one of those movies that I think Time has treated it better. Because a lot of people, when this movie came out, wanted to see another version of Clerks, which in a lot of ways this is. But it's also a Clerks with a massive budget and a lot of studio impact. And I think that was part of the problem with it. And now that we're separated from Clerks over time and we've seen other Kevin Smith movies, now we can watch this and really appreciate it for the film that it is. Did you like it when you first saw it?
No.
Yeah,
I did.
No, I didn't. In fact, when we watched this, I said, maybe I'll like this better as an adult because I do find that is starting to happen. When I first saw this, I remember thinking it was kind of boring, low budget. I mean, even by Clerk standards, low budget. And a lot of the humor, I guess I didn't get at that time, but I definitely enjoyed it more this time.
When this first came out on DVD, I have it on Blu-ray now, and they just recycled all the bonus material from the DVD. And I remember Kevin Smith, like on the, the behind the scenes of the running commentary or whatever, he was saying like the producers wanted a smart Porky's, and that's kind of what it is. It definitely has like that early 80s, late 70s, like raunchy, ribald humor, kind of vibe going to it. It's like there's a few shots where it's just boobs for like no reason, and like even like the opening where they show the stores and it's like rug munchers.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a rug munchers and gerbils.
Yeah, it's a lot of like lowbrow humor, and that's very like Porky's, Revenge of the Nerds, Police Academy type humor, you know?
Yeah. Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Dazed and Confused, which is, I think, and from my understanding, is kind of what he was going for. It's what the studio wanted. They're like, hey, give us something like this. And he's like, yeah, I could do that. Heck yeah, no problem. The thing is, I don't get where all that money went, because Chasing Amy cost a fraction of this film. And this film all takes place in the mall. Like, nobody's a huge actor at this time, right? Ben Affleck was a complete unknown. So it's not like he had, Shannon Doherty was probably the biggest star.
Yeah, and she always gets top billing whenever, like, it actually opens with her. It says she's the first credit in the.
Yeah, probably something she negotiated in her contract.
That was when 90210 was just coming out. So they were trying to market this as a Shannon Doherty vehicle, even though she's a rather minor
supporting character.
Yeah.
I always forget she's in it when I watch this. I say, oh yeah, Shannon Doherty. I don't know why, but she doesn't stick in my mind for me.
Yeah.
But I consider this a very dialogue heavy movie. Maybe that's why I didn't like it the first time. It is, I mean, all his movies are like that, just long scenes of dialogue.
Yeah, it has lots of slapsticky hijinks, like Jay and Silent Bob trying to destroy the stage and all that.
Right.
That's very like that's like the total antithesis of Clerks, where just two guys in a convenience store bullshitting, and like now they're going like full on, balls to the wall humor. It's very Police Academy type. It's, I don't know. I don't want to say it's like lowbrow or well, it's simple, but it's not like insulting to your intelligence.
No, I mean, he's a very smart writer as well, and so he throws stuff in there that is not. He knows his audience. Comic book nerds. He knows what he's giving you. But let's go back a little bit for the audience here listening. I'm assuming you've probably seen it, or at least know it. It follows two guys. Both got dumped by their girlfriends. One of them decides he wants to get his girlfriend back, so they go to the mall where she's participating in a game show that her father is filming. And in the process, like you said, we get hijinks that take place in the mall. Hijinks with the security guard, hijinks with the father, played by the great Michael Rooker. Yeah. Shannon Doherty plays one of the girlfriends, and you get everything takes place in this mall, and you get a lot of 90s culture with this as well. Like, we lived in the mall. If you guys, I'm sure you guys are Gen Xers. From the 80s to the 90s, you skip school when you're a kid. Where do you go? You go to the mall. Where are you going with your friends on the weekends? You're going to the mall. So if you remember that era, if you can appreciate that era, you appreciate that aspect of this movie, which you can't do anymore. So in a way, it's kind of a time capsule of it. And that's more or less it. A lot of Kevin Smith style dialogue, superheroes, comic books, and a guy staring at one of those posters that you let your eyes relax long enough to see.
That triggered such nostalgia. I mean, it captured mall culture in the mid-90s. That's when that stuff first appeared, and I owned several of those.
Yeah.
I remember the frustration of being in that store trying to see it for the first time.
Those 3D art books, that's like the epitome of like 90s pop culture. Because I remember I was just watching Seinfeld, the entire series, and there's an episode in there where they're trying to see a 3D eye poster, and like that's came out about the same time as this, probably 95, 96, something like that. It took me a while, but I remember after a while I could get them. And speaking of malls, I actually worked in a small mall in Schenectady, New York, where I grew up at Media Play. I don't know. Do you ever have Media Play?
We didn't have any Media Play over there. Or if we did, I didn't go to it. No, I'm assuming it's like a DVD type store or something.
Yeah, it's kind of like Best Buy. It's movies, books, music. So
we had
it was awesome. It was huge. It's kind of like Barnes and Noble, except
they had CDs.
A much smaller book section and a much bigger movie and music section when people were still buying. Actually, DVDs might have been out by then, but it's huge VHS and CD and cassette tape. And do you remember really briefly there was a push for a digital cassette tape? They were called like DATs or something.
Sounds familiar. I do vaguely remember those. Yeah,
I remember we sold those. It was like one compartment for the entire store. It was like maybe like 10 different albums. Nobody bought them. They're like super
they were
rare.
like little square, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of remember
I don't remember that at all. How weird.
It was a really brief period.
Yeah.
And
or,
like, I don't remember who
Divx.
released them. And then, yeah, and everybody's like, nope. And they disappeared.
Do you remember Divx?
No, I don't remember that.
Divx was you would rent a DVD and it would basically self-explode, or like it was like you could only play it once and it would never work again.
For what purpose?
So that you wouldn't have to return it. It was like disposable DVDs. So you would rent it and then watch it and then you could just throw it away.
That's very wasteful.
Yeah, it did not catch on.
There's millions of those in a landfill somewhere.
Shout out to Technology Connections on YouTube. You should watch. If you watch some of his older stuff, like on Laserdisc and stuff, I know he has an episode on Divx.
I had a girlfriend. Her parents had a Laserdisc player, and I remember going over and watch it.
I have
and then you pull it out, turn it.
All
over,
3 of the original Star Wars on Laserdisc.
That's the only way you can watch them, pretty much. Yeah.
I only saw those in school. Yeah. Only in school. I never actually knew anybody that had one.
Yeah. So Clerks was released, like we mentioned there as well. Clerks, Mallrats. So we have Clerks, Mallrats, Chasing Amy. That's the order of like the first 3 movies, then Dogma.
Right.
Mallrats was financially a failure, and it really came out into its own once it was released on VHS and DVD. And people started renting it and like, oh yeah, this is actually pretty good. And you mentioned the commentary. That was a contributing factor, actually, because you have Ben Affleck, Kevin Smith adding commentary to the DVD, which a lot of people said was a bit funnier than the actual movie itself. I disagree with that, but they did make it quite entertaining, as you've seen, because you said they copied it over to the Blu-ray.
That was kind of like golden age of DVD too.
Getting the commentary.
The bonus materials, the deleted scenes, like commentaries, I think are kind of like the prelude to podcasts. Because I remember I would sit there and actually watch a movie with the commentary on it, and like when I was like in the Navy and I was like in a barracks room and other people like, why are you watching? Like, why don't you just watch the movie? I'm like, I want to hear what the director said. I was like, man, you're such a nerd. And like now it's kind of like it's
now
like
you
kind
don't
of like
can't get that because you
podcast,
stream everything.
Yeah.
And I feel like every deleted scene on every movie anytime anywhere is now on YouTube somewhere with some like, especially in the age of AI channels, they just take all these bonus materials and now they make all these did you know trivia videos.
Did you know I pulled this trivia off IMDb and the DVD and now I've made a YouTube video about it.
I know you can. Well, supposedly YouTube is cracking down on these AI channels like that. Like if it's faceless, but there's tons of them.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we'll see. So starring, by the way, which mentioned a few of these people, Jason Lee plays Brody, the kind of wisecracking one. At the time, he was a professional skateboarder, had no acting credits, and Kevin Smith actually saw him and liked him so much that he put him in this film, which, by the way, as somebody who's attempted to make a living as an actor or can appreciate it, that's the dream, is you're just walking down the street and some filmmaker's like, you, be in my movie. And you're like, yes. Unfortunately, that does not happen every day.
There's so many stories like that.
Yeah, it's so funny because I only know Jason Lee as an actor. I've never actually seen him skateboard.
No, but I could see it. I can absolutely see it.
He has the look to it.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy London.
Go
ahead.
Sorry, I actually wrote in my notes. Doesn't Jason Lee in this movie remind you of basically like a young Chevy Chase?
Yeah. Kind of that kind of smart mouthy, slapsticky. He doesn't do many prank falls like Chevy Chase was known for back when he was young. But the wisecracking aspect of it is very much a young Chevy Chase.
Yeah, and like he almost never stops talking too.
That's his gift.
That's like a Kevin Smith trope. It's always one character who is a motor mouth and one is more quiet. Like Jay and Silent Bob, and of course, but even like Dante and Randall. And then in Chase and Amy with like Ben Affleck's character. It's funny, Jason Lee and Chase and Amy, I think, is basically the same character as he is in Mallrats.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's Banky.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. Jeremy London plays the dumped guy trying to get his girlfriend back. Shannon Doherty plays Renee, the biggest name in the cast that we mentioned, albeit not necessarily the most memorable character.
No.
Claire Forlane plays the girlfriend. Ben Ben Affleck makes an appearance as Shannon Hamilton, and he plays the clerk from a clothing store who more or less just brags about bagging women and trying to bang women's.
Yeah.
But he apparently, Kevin Smith and him like bonded because he more or less wrote Chasing Amy with Ben Affleck in mind and put him in a lot of stuff. They're still friends
today.
Yeah. They went through a brief period where they didn't talk too much and stuff. Kevin Smith talks about this at one point where I don't know if they kind of got into a bit of a tiff or whatever, but it was when Ben Affleck just got really huge and, you know, they just kind of went their separate ways for a while. And then they kind of got back and Kevin Smith's like, hey, man, what's up? And so now Ben Affleck does his little cameos in Kevin Smith movies again. Michael Rooker, who's like the world's biggest badass. I should mention Ethan Suplee, who plays William, the guy staring at the Magic Eye poster. He's great because have you seen him lately?
Yeah, he's all jacked.
No,
he's
really
ripped. He looks nothing like his like pudgy character in this or My Name Is Earl.
He actually got
hardcore gym guy.
Fatter. I think he blew up to like 400 or 500 pounds at one point. And
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I've seen him on Michael Malice and Joe Rogan's podcast a few times, and I think he has his own podcast where he basically talks about, it's like a fitness podcast now. And yeah, that was like before Ozempic and all that stuff. He lost it all natural.
He did it all naturally, like gym every day and working out. Yeah, he's ripped. Joey Lauren Adams, she plays Gwen, also will go on to star in Chasing Amy. And I believe she was Kevin Smith's girlfriend for a brief period of time as well.
Yeah, this is how they met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and other people. We need to mention Jason Mewes as Jay and Kevin Smith as Silent Bob because they show up in every Kevin Smith movie.
And
funny trivia on this one, Jason Mewes, the studio actually didn't want him to be in the film because he was quite heavy into drugs at the time, and they didn't think they could rely on him.
They just thought he was like too weird looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost a role given to Seth Green. Can you imagine if Seth Green took over the role of Jay? I mean, I could imagine it.
I could imagine it, but I'm glad they didn't because now to this day, you can't see anybody but these two. And I love Kevin Smith for sticking to his guns on this as well. And, you know, this is his second film, big studio production. He's probably got a lot of like studio heads like pressuring him. And for him to say, no, Jason Mewes is the guy. Like, I'll vouch for him. I'll make sure he shows up to set every day. Like, I'll make sure he does the part. Which props to him for that and not just giving into the money and being like, okay, fine, whatever, cast whoever you want.
Yeah, that would be so disruptive though to go from Clerks to this with a different Jay. I think he realized that as well. Yeah, because he was kind of stuck with them for a while. And of all the people you mentioned, I noticed there was one actor that only appears in this movie and like never appears in another Kevin Smith movie. Do you know which one that is?
Stan Lee.
No, well, and
that's what I was going to get. But, who?
Jeremy London.
Yeah, it is true.
Jeremy London. He's not in any other Kevin Smith movies. And I was like, it was just a one-off for him. Kind of odd because he was loyal to everybody else.
Didn't he, I don't know. I don't follow him too closely because he was like, wasn't he on like him and his brother were like teen heartthrobs. So I remember my sister used to buy Bop and 16 and all those teeny bopper magazines.
They were in there because they were twins. I know they were twins.
I know one of them was in Dazed and Confused and
Okay. Yeah.
But I think that's it. He just
acting or
doesn't do. I haven't heard much from him either. So it could just
went on to college and now they're like real actors.
Yeah.
I don't know. It just stuck out to me as I don't know. He always seemed kind of out of place in that movie anyway because he's so quiet. I guess as an actor or a character.
Yeah.
Compared to everybody else, maybe that's why.
I think it's just he played the straight man to everybody's else wackishness, so you had to have that somewhat grounded character to carry the story along. Yeah. But you're right, he's not like necessarily the most memorable character. And you don't sympathize with him a lot. And you're like, oh yeah, poor baby, big deal. Your girlfriend dumped you because you're kind of a loser, you know? Justifiably dumped you, really.
Right.
Based on how he looks, I think he should have been like more of like an alpha male type character. It should have been like he should have been the lead and Brody should have been the sidekick, not the other way around. And we kind of had this discussion we were talking about Chasing Amy is like for Chase and Amy, the executives wanted like an A-lister at the time. They wanted like David Schwimmer in the Ben Affleck role.
Right.
And at first we were laughing at it. Then we were like, we kind of thought about it. Like, actually, I think because it's Ben Affleck and you just see him now as like an A-list Hollywood, leading man type. But he was, an up and comer at that time. But it's just the way he looks is that you just don't buy him as more of a meeker type character. And the same thing in this movie is because Jason Lee has just this bombastic personality, and he's like this, but he's a comic book nerd, and somehow he has Shannon Doherty as a girlfriend. I don't really buy that, Like I always thought Shannon Doherty, they should have made her like kind of like a geekier girl, like a Suicide Girl. Remember those like girls with like tattoos all over and like the big glasses and everything, or like because she just seems like Brenda on 90210, and I just didn't feel like that character would even give Jason Lee's character Brody the time of day, let alone date him.
It's true.
They were an odd match.
Yeah,
and she couldn't stand him. You could tell.
Yeah,
she didn't like him.
They don't really, but it kind of serves the purpose of the plot, because it's like they just show them in bed together, and then she dumps them, and then they just kind of like get back together at the end, and it's like that sitcom kind of trope of just, all right, we just wrap this up and happy ending, and
the hero gets the girl. But I agree with your point. I would have preferred to see those characters swap, Jeremy London and Ben Affleck's character. That would have made sense, because you could see Ben Affleck in that lead role of being the protagonist, and then he would match Jason Lee's manic personality a little bit better and kind of ground it. That would be interesting.
I thought he should have been just written more as like an alpha male type guy.
Maybe that's what it is. Jason Lee, he could just kind of disappears next to him, I think, because he just dominates the screen when he's on. So I think that's why I tend to forget Jeremy London's even in this one.
Or they should have just made TS as much of a geek as Brody. You could see two comic book geeks being close friends, and it's funny because like when it opens,
he's not, is he?
Yeah, remember when Jason or is it Jeremy or Jason?
It's Jeremy London.
Okay, I always get it mixed up. Yeah. But in the way I remember is because it's Jason Lee and Jeremy London, not two Jasons. But towards the beginning of the movie, Jeremy London goes down to Brody's cellar and he has the comics and everything.
Yep.
And
which were Kevin Smith's actual comics, by the way. Well, trivia.
Yeah. And he says, hey, I tried to show you how to play or handle comics in 6th grade, but you wanted to play Little League.
Yeah.
Like, why would these guys be friends? One's the jock, one's the nerd. They should have either both been nerds or geeks.
And throughout the film, Jeremy London's character's pretty much perpetually annoyed with Jason Lee's character, right? So if you're constantly being bothered by this person, why are you still friends with him? Like, you'd think he'd be like, dude, F off, man. You're so annoying. Like,
yeah.
That's one thing I didn't understand. You're spending all day in the mall with this guy. You can't stand him.
Yeah.
That's kind of how like in Mallrats or in Clerks, Dante's like that with Randall. He's just like, why am I friends with you?
At least he calls it out. Like,
even in Seinfeld, Jerry would always say to George, same thing. He's just like, how am I still friends with you?
Sometimes you're just friends because you've been friends for a long time. Maybe that's what this comes down to.
I think it's just, maybe it's a 90s thing, but it's kind of a male. I've definitely been in those kind of friendships too, where it's just, but it's usually about circumstance. Like it's somebody you work with or they're friends of your friend. So you're like friends-in-laws. And it's just kind of like you're friends by association.
I know people like that. Yeah.
That's right. Randall and Dante.
Let's mention Stan Lee real quick because you brought him up. And I love the fact that Stan Lee, because we think of Stan Lee from his Marvel appearances, his little cameos, but this was pre that. So when Kevin Smith wrote the film, he wrote that character in there, and he basically wrote him as a Stan Lee type equivalency, right? And one of the producers, I believe, knew Stan Lee and basically created an introduction. And that's how Stan Lee got in the film, because Kevin Smith's like, yeah, if you can get Stan Lee, the actual Stan Lee, that'd be fantastic. And so they met, they put him in the film, and he kind of praised. He does more than he does in the Marvel movies, by the way, as well. He actually has multiple lines and gives the main character some advice. And they have a nice callback if you've seen Captain Marvel, to where in Captain Marvel, the Stan Lee cameo is on a bus and he's studying his lines for this film. And
Really?
so it's a fun little callback to where he's like reading and studying, like, because it takes place in 1995, Captain Marvel does.
Oh, okay.
And so that's his cameo in Captain Marvel, is on a bus rehearsing his lines for Kevin Smith's
I knew
Mallrats film.
Stan Lee because I was a comic book nerd at the time, but like that wasn't my first time seeing him talk and speak. I've only ever just like saw pictures of him or cartoons, I think.
This might have been his first film.
Yeah,
maybe.
Probably very early on. It was definitely before he was kind of known as doing that stuff. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So overall, like, still liking it. Let's talk about your opinion. I get the vibe that you're a fan, Chad, and you're so, Christina.
Yeah. Go ahead.
So no, I do like this movie better than I did when I saw it in my 20s. And it is dialogue heavy. I've always had trouble with movies that are like that. So it took me a while to get into Kevin Smith for that reason. But no, I appreciate this. I just like the stupid little gags that are in this. The stores that have the stupid names, rug munchers on them. Can Superman have sex? The conversations, the crude jokes. And that mall culture you were talking about from the mid-90s, that's when I got my driver's license. So I was at the mall all the time. So like the throwback to the corduroy and the flannel, and I'm getting more nostalgia from it than I did seeing it for the first time. And I don't know, there's just like some weird elements to the movie, like the way the mall is almost always empty, and then the way people just walk by them while they're doing crazy stuff and don't even acknowledge that they're doing it.
It's very,
totally.
It's just sitcom-y over the top.
Yeah, it's just an odd setting. Last 10 minutes with the game show, I could do without that.
Yeah, that's been my complaint of this movie since day one, is the whole third act. Like it should just ended when TS got back together with Brandy, but they had to wrap up the Jason Lee and Renee subplot too, and then it's very like this is the John Landis Police Academy type thing where like all of a sudden a bunch of cops show up, and then there's this subplot which we should have mentioned this earlier, is this girl who's supposed to be a teenager writing like a book about having sex.
Oh yeah,
that's very creepy in 2026.
It is now.
It is.
It was
that's true.
Back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like I saw this in the theaters and I was just like, really? He couldn't, like, there's got to be a better explanation for that. Like, you can't have. It's. I don't even know what we can say because I don't want us to get like shadow banned or whatever.
Unless Kevin Smith knew somebody that was like that.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Very, Epstein.
Yeah, because I don't know how you would come up with that otherwise. But yeah, it's like a little detail.
Definitely a different era for that subplot. You're right. I forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up because so she's an underage character and she's literally doing this like study about having sex with all these people, and you're like, and I agree. I remember watching that too. I'm like, ooh, that's not appropriate.
Yeah, I mean,
and now it's really not appropriate.
They could have done the same plot. They could have done the same plot if she was like 21 or something, and then
there was no reason for her to be underage.
You have to get Ben Affleck's character taken out of the picture at the end. Like they didn't have to go into this whole statutory thing.
They made her underage because they were setting up Ben Affleck's character.
Yeah, but
so if she's underage, they had to play it because they were like, she's underage.
But again, remember this was actually Ben Affleck or Kevin Smith was friends with Harvey Weinstein back then, and
it's a question of how friendly they were as well too. Or was it more like he needed Harvey Weinstein to release his films? Like I don't know. Like either. I hope that's my hope is that anyone that worked with him in that capacity was like, I kind of need him for my films, but I don't like him, and I put up with that's me projecting onto Kevin Smith because I don't want to view Kevin Smith as a bad person.
No, it's true.
So
I mean, it was kind of
the case.
One of those things you had to do if you were going to break in some cases.
Yeah. Tarantino, kind of the same way. You kind of had to buddy up to him.
I didn't want to derail your podcast, Milo, but there was one thing I did want to bring up about this movie, is that it has like maybe the epitome of the 90s alt-rock soundtrack. It's very grunge / Britpop. Like there's actually a lot of like unknown, like, well, there was Bush did a song, Elastica, and Weezer, the closing song, Suzanne, which is probably the best song in that soundtrack. But every other song in this movie is like total unknowns, and you can listen to it now and you just like, that's just like 90s alt rock sound. And it like, and like, I mean, I had that CD as a kid and I could still listen to those songs now. I'd be curious how younger people would react to it. But yeah, if you want the absolute epitome of 90s alt rock, get the Mallrats soundtrack or just watch the movie.
That's good. Maybe that's where the $8 million went, was licensing all the music.
Maybe
licensing and Stan Lee.
Yeah,
good soundtrack is like
probably
crucial to any 90s movie.
It was all locations because they had to lease this mall,
the Eden Prairie Center in Minnesota.
Couldn't have been that expensive. I know, yeah, some Minnesota mall.
Maybe it was getting ready to be torn down.
It said that
and it had a lot of vacant stores, so
yeah, right.
They needed the money.
They weren't transforming stores.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. So real quickly before we go, let people know where they can find you guys' show.
We're at His and Hers Gen X everywhere: YouTube, TikTok, Instagram. Yeah, those are the big three. And any audio podcatcher, just type in His and Hers Gen X, will come right up. Yeah. Because we couldn't, all the good names are taken.
We were just talking about it today. We're like, should we change it? But then we can't find, it's so hard to get out names. They're all gone.
I think it works. It you know what it is? It's you guys doing a show, Gen Xers. I got it.
As long as we can find it, yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. And as always, audience, you can find me at theages90s.com. From there, you can find all the social medias and whatnot. If you enjoy the show, give it a thumbs up, a like, a share, and all that fun stuff. And with that, we will say we are out of here. God, I didn't come up with a good out of here for this episode.
Well, you know what? This will be continued on our channel, on our podcast, because we're gonna do an album review.
And I've got something to say about that too. Actually, looking forward to it. So anyway, we'll just say we're out of here, and we'll talk to you next time. Goodbye.
Smell you later.
Yep. See you on the flip side.
Yep.
All right.